Hey guys, I'm joined here by Dr. Joel Seedman. Joel, what is your biggest moment in 2015, and what are you most excited about moving forward into next year?
John, first off, great to be here. Thanks for having me on again.
You got it, man.
I was looking forward to doing this, especially since the last one went very well. Yeah, so I guess 2015, great year for me. Had a lot of opportunities with writings and different things with athletes. Had some pretty good opportunities come up in 2015 to do some stuff for the NFL Combine a lot more in depth in the subsequent years here, especially for 2016, 2014, 2015. Had some great opportunities with the NFL Combine, got to work with quite a few high level athletes. As a result, I was able to basically make different deals with different agents and was able to work together with Georgia Sports Performance in Atlanta. And we're going to be teaming up this year coming up in 2016. We're going to have quite a few very high level collegiate football players that we're going to be training for the NFL Combine. So, really looking forward to that. We're going to have some very top notch talent and just, again, very excited to see what we can do with that and hopefully get some guys into the first round draft.
Man, that's exciting, and we know each other pretty well, but I didn't even know that you had the athletes coming in for this offseason, or I should say the NFL Combine prep. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been something that, when I first started off with strength and conditioning about 9 years ago, a lot of what I did was in the collegiate setting with football players. And I took a little bit of a break from that, and it's kind of funny how things come back full circle. But, had the opportunity the last few years to do more of that, and it's been growing. And definitely the last few months had some things work out with different agents, like I mentioned. And 2016 is going to be big. But, NFL Combine, it's a different beast and a different animal altogether because, as you know, when you work with an athlete, it's always great when you don't really have huge time constraints. If you say, hey, this is an athlete that I work with, I'm going to have them for 6 months to a year, or even if you have them indefinitely, you get to work on a lot of different things that you want to. And it's, a gradual process, cleaning up their technique, their movement patterns, eliminating dysfunction. With the NFL Combine, it's a bit different because depending when the athletes come to you, you may only have them for 6 weeks. It's really 6 to potentially 10 weeks, depending on when you get them and when they do their testing. But it's very different because you have a short period of time to maximize their performance. And unfortunately, you can't be quite as picky with certain things that, as we've discussed in the past, perfecting movement patterns, correcting muscle function, eliminating dysfunction. That's huge for both of us. And sometimes it can get a little bit tricky with the combine training.
Yeah, I agree. But in 6 to 8 or 10 weeks, what's the number one thing that you're going to be focusing on, say, for a speed athlete, so one of the outside guys?
I'd say the number one thing that I'm going to be focusing on is hip function. And when I say hip function, that basically relates to everything from power and speed to mobility, mechanics, because a lot of their tests, from the vertical jump to the broad jump to the 40-yard sprint to the L drill, the cone drill, the pro agility, shuttle, all those are predicated on proper hip function, power, speed, explosiveness. And again, a lot of that comes from the hips. And so many of these athletes, they're just so locked up in their hips. And some of them, it may have been a result of just getting an injury in the previous season. Again, these guys are pretty much coming right off of the end of their season, and I'm
Right.
getting them. So they may have had some type of whether it's small injury or bigger injury or tweak, and oftentimes they're really stiff. So those first few weeks is just, teaching them how to use their hips because it's going to affect everything, and all those other tests are predicated on proper hip function.
Right on, man. Yeah, if I were to have a gun to my head and say you have to improve an athlete's performance in one way and you have to pick one joint, it would definitely be the hip. I'm gonna go out there and say that both you and myself, we might have some exciting things coming up in 2016 as well, jointly. But we'll have to talk about that on a future episode of Strength Doc Podcast in 2016, man. Wanted
Yeah,
to keep this one short and sweet today, but thanks again for being on the show.
my pleasure.
Man, we'll talk to you next year.
Take care, John.